I want you to be able to understand the basic parts and sections of an IEP. We're going to go through one together. I'm going to show you all of the things so you can locate IEP information within your students' IEPs. You're also going to understand implementation of IEPs and how to put them into lesson plans. And you're going to understand how to support staff with the implementation. So if you have support staff or paraprofessionals in your classroom or that come into your classroom with students, and you're going to learn important collaboration strategies. Here are the 5 sections of the IEP that matter the most, and if you give me 1 second, I'm going to show you where all of these parts are in an IEP sample that I have for you. So you want to look for the present levels of academic and functional performance. You might hear this called the PLAP, the PLOP, the PLEP, the present levels, the present ed levels. It has a lot of different names, but pretty much this is where all of the data is. You want to look for the annual goals and objectives, the accommodations and modifications, supplementary aids and services, the service delivery minutes, and the setting. Let me take you on a wild ride to show you where to find all of these things. All right, it is time to dive into an actual IEP. So go grab your students' IEPs. I'll meet you right back here in a second. All right, the first thing we want to look for is the present levels of academic and functional performance. Again, this is going to look very different in all the IEPs, but I want you to take your trusty highlighter or a Post-it note to label it in here. Again, going to look very different, but I highlighted it here. So in this IEP template, in this sample IEP that I have, it's going to take, some of them are one big page and it's just one box and they write everything like a Word doc. And so it'll show up here. And then it'll show, like it'll just continue on. This one is actually broken up into sections. And so you can see this performance area is health. This performance area is motor abilities for OT, which means the student had occupational therapy. And then it continues on into quite a few more pages, which I actually don't dislike that it's split up, because then if you were just the math teacher, you could go pull up the math present levels and have that information right there specific for math. So you would know specifically what you're looking for. So I like it. I also like it all being in one place because it just makes it so much easier to find. But this is all the present levels. It's generally going to be a huge chunk of space. If it's not, that might be a red flag that it's time to rewrite that child's IEP. But that's for another day. This is your present levels of academic and functional performance. This is where you're going to find all of the data, the meat and potatoes for everything that is written in the rest of the IEP. If a student has an accommodation, a service has service minutes for your classroom, has accommodations, modifications, an IEP goal that you don't understand, everything has to be linked back to the present levels. If you cannot find that link back to the present levels, you need to have a meeting with your special education teacher and probably call an IEP meeting. You can do that as a gen ed teacher to figure out what the correlation is to why do we have this specific IEP goal, which we're going to find in a second. Where is this in the present levels? I need to understand. So just a little insider tip for you. So first section, present levels of academic and functional performance. Again, meat and potatoes. The next section is the annual goals and objectives. So I have them starred here. Yours are probably going to look very different. Again, different templates looked very different here. This is why I want you to star it or to highlight it or put a tab in this on your students' IEPs. I want you to highlight all the IEP goals. Now this student has 12, or I think it was 14 different IEP goals. It's entirely too many. That's again, another time for another training. But you want to star or highlight all of the IEP goals. You may have a section in your child's IEP that you're looking at where the accommodations are listed out, just listed out. There might be a drop box and they're just clicking the boxes, or they're going to be all listed out. The next thing you want to look for are the supplementary aids and services. This is typically going to be near the end of the IEP because this is one of the last decisions that we make. We do not choose a curriculum based off of what money we have. We choose the LRE and then we choose the curriculum. So that is one of the last things that we choose. The LRE is the least restrictive environment. That is where the student is going to be educated. Now you can see here it says location of services in the least restrictive environment, district non-resident school, special day program. It's going to tell you how many minutes. Now it's going to give you an explanation of why that child is in that LRE. In your specific IEP that you're looking at, you might see it listed out where it says LRE special education classroom, this many minutes for this subject, general education classroom, this many minutes, this frequency. You're going to have a frequency and a duration, all of that stuff. So LRE, go find it with the supplementary aids and services. This is where you're also going to find the services for occupational therapy, speech pathology, physical therapy. This one here has a box, so these are the IEP goals. This one has a box for related service, language, speech. This one also, on the next page, I'm pretty sure was, oh, nope, this one is adapted PE. So here's a related service, adapted PE. So if you don't see them listed out, again, go check the IEP goals. Some systems have them tagged like this on the IEP goal page. So you may, I don't want to say get lucky, but you might get lucky and have a bunch of information on the IEP goal page. You're going to have your IEP goals, you're going to have your accommodations modifications, and you're going to have your related service information here on this page as well. That's where the service delivery minutes and testing and setting is going to come in with the LRE. Supplementary aids and services is going to be your accommodations and modifications, any additional things that they may need, related services. Again, so some of them will be on their own separate page, like we saw the LRE back here. This student also had behavior goals and a behavior support plan. So like there's the parent signature page. There's just some pages that, yes, you need to be aware of them, but you need to be able to find those 5 sections within a child's IEP. So the present levels, the goals, the accommodations and modifications, the supplementary supports and services, and the service delivery minutes and the setting, which is the LRE, or least restrictive environment. All right, now that you know what to look for in an IEP, we need to take this into real life. So implementing IEPs in real life, and I have broken it down into a before the lesson, a during the lesson, and an after the lesson. Before the lesson, we're going to start over here. You can use a student snapshot to plan accommodations. So if you are unsure or don't have or not provided with an IEP snapshot, or it's also called an IEP at a glance, ask your special education teacher to print one out for you. Most IEP writing systems that we use to write IEPs can do this for you. If not, you can print one off their free ones. We have a free one at Mrs. D's Corner. You can download it and put all of that information in there, or sit down and write one out with your special education teacher and do it together. This is going to give you that quick access to look at what goals students have, what accommodations they need, what modifications they need when you're lesson planning. So as you lesson plan, you can check for these key accommodations and ask yourself questions like, okay, Stephanie needs things to be chunked. Does any part of this lesson need to be chunked? Or do I need to make James some visuals for this? Or does Jackson need extended time finishing out this part of the activity? Or how can I modify, or how can I have the special education teacher modify this test for this student based on their accommodations? When you look at student snapshots of IEPs, which have their goals and their accommodations and modifications on it, this is going to help you avoid that last minute scramble, and it's really going to build habits for you around the implementation of IEPs. So it's taking just one thing that you already have in your classroom, which are IEPs, into what you're already doing with lesson planning and just marrying them together essentially. So what accommodations can I use within this lesson to meet these students? What goals can I target with this specific lesson? You might even get to look at prerequisite skills. Once you have ingrained this habit into your already system of lesson planning, look at prerequisite skills. What prerequisite skills do these students need for this lesson? And you may already be doing this for your students that are in your classroom that are maybe going through RTI or MTSS. So it's just one more thing that you're already doing that you can also do for your students with IEPs. Now you can also add, like I said, one goal to your lesson plan. So if let's say you have a student in your classroom and they are coming to you for math, and this student has math goals with single digit addition, and maybe you're working on triple digit multiplication, okay? There's a very wide array of skills in between those two skills, so there's a lot of prerequisite skills that are missing. However, multiplication is what? Repeated addition. So you can then target that skill too, and maybe pull something else for the student to work on, or add that language into the lesson that you already have planned to target that IEP goal. So there's also this other example. If the student's IEP goal is answering what questions, so who, what, when, where, why, how, right? You can intentionally call on them during your reading discussion to answer who are the main characters in this story. What did the main character do after this happened? Another example is maybe during independent work, you can pair a writing goal with sentence starters that match the student's IEP objectives. You work with your special education teacher counterpart to do this as well. So if you are stuck or have questions, or you are very unsure of how to implement an IEP goal into your lesson planning, reach out to your special education teacher. They are going to be your best friend when it comes to all things IEPs and when it comes to implementing them in your classroom. This matters because you're now aligning your IEPs to your lesson without changing the whole lesson. And so this just makes it super, super easy for you to target skills, make sure you're targeting accommodations, modifications, and really align the lessons with the IEPs and the goals that are in those IEPs that you already have in your classroom. Now, during the lesson, you can use visuals that support everyone, or just use different supports that support everyone. And I'm pretty sure you're probably already doing this, using visual timers, step-by-step directions, sentence frames. The differentiation that you're providing, so differentiation is a general educational teacher's skill that we do with everyone, right? We use it in special education too, but it is a strategy that is targeting our students that are in general education, right? Differentiation is not specifically for special education. So you're probably already doing all of this in your classroom as well during lessons. But visual timers, step-by-step directions, sentence frames, these are all already great tools that you, again, are probably already doing in your classroom that will support your students with IEPs and also the rest of the students in your classroom. This matters because UDL, or the Universal Design of Learning Strategies, double as IEP implementation. So again, a lot of the things that you're already doing are going to help your students with IEPs. You can also provide flexible participation options. Again, you're probably already doing a lot of these. So if students are responding to a lesson or a question that you have asked, they can respond by writing, typing, drawing, verbally sharing answers, not just writing, I need you to write a 5-paragraph essay. Okay, so maybe they can type it. Or maybe they can verbally do and have it translated with text to or speech to text, right? Or maybe they can draw it out depending on the student. You can also use turn taking instead of whole group responses for students with anxiety or communication goals. This is super helpful. Why does all of this matter? These are all super inclusive practices that are going to meet multiple IEP needs at once, but also support the rest of the students in your classroom that don't have IEPs. So it's not about doing more to individualize what you're doing in the classroom. While that's still very important, you're just providing more supports that are truly going to help everyone in the classroom, but meet multiple needs of students in your classroom too. When it comes to after the lesson, you can use exit tickets. I know those are really, really big in middle school. At least they were when I taught middle school. Using exit tickets as progress monitoring. You can customize these for IEP goals with sentence stems, rating scales, check boxes. So it's super easy for students to give you an answer to provide this data on an exit ticket. So for example, today I practice. Maybe that's for a student who's working on self-reflection or self-advocacy. Instead of answering a question about what the lesson was about, what did you learn today? Maybe they're talking about today I practiced. This matters because you're turning a class-wide strategy into something that is usable IEP evidence, which is data. And this data is really important when it comes to making decisions at the child's next IEP meeting. So keep those work samples, use those exit tickets as work samples because that is data and that is important data that we can use for the child's next IEP. You can also use 2-minute team check-ins. So chat with your co-teacher if there's a paraprofessional in the classroom, or even if like the special education teacher beforehand or after the lesson. How did Elijah do with this transition today? Or did you notice that Stephanie used her graphic organizer? I always provided, as the special education teacher, it was a 1-page check sheet for each of my students that went into a general education classroom, and the paraprofessional would take it with if they were with the student for that class. But it was just, what did they learn today? Like, what was on the lesson plan? What time did they arrive? What time did they leave? And what accommodations did they use? And the accommodations were check boxes. This was data for me to know what accommodations are we actually using in different classes, But it was also super easy and simple for the general education teacher to do in a quick minute. It didn't take too long to have that conversation or get that data from my general education teachers because it was just check boxes. But you can also do a shared Google Doc, have sticky notes, which I love me a good sticky note, to log down informal observations that you're seeing. All of this is data, and as long as you're using this data and you're analyzing it to make decisions, that's what matters. So don't just take the data to take the data or have the conversations to have the conversations. If we're not analyzing the data to adjust our interventions, change up our SDI, make sure we're using our accommodations modifications, then doing all of this is for nothing. It matters because, again, it keeps the teams aligned without adding more meetings and more to-dos into our already really busy schedules as general education teachers and special education teachers. So try to find what works best for you, and what works best for you and your special education teacher or para or support staff in the classroom is going to be very different than what works for your neighbor teacher or the teacher down the hall or maybe even another IEP team that you're on. So you have to find what works best for you. Remember, you're probably already doing a lot of these things that help your students with IEPs, and the goal isn't to do more. It's to recognize that these strategies are being used already, that you're using them, and that you're then documenting them when needed and applying them into your lessons with your students with IEPs, applying them with intention. And now we get to the part where we talk about collaboration. This is where we do that mindset shift from it's all on me, I have to do it all, I have to collect the data, follow the IEPs, make sure I'm doing these accommodations, modify everything, make sure they're, getting XYZ, to we're in this together. It's really important that as general education teachers, you understand how to work with your special education teacher peers, the paraprofessionals, the service providers on the team, without this need for more meetings or more paperwork or extra paperwork. So it's really just about finding meaningful collaboration for you and your IEP teams that you're on. This could be quick conversations, really quick routines, just having that shared responsibility. So let's go through a couple of things together. First, we're going to talk about different questions that you can ask the team as the general education teacher and why this is important. So the first question you can ask, and I love asking clarifying questions, what's one thing that's working well for the student right now? This is going to be a question that you can use to continue what's doing well. And you may also be asked this question with an upcoming IEP meeting that we have or that you guys have. This is a great question for just understanding what's going really well so we can keep doing these things. So we're not reinventing the wheel. We're not changing something that's working well to give them something that's not going to work well. So what's one thing that's working well for the student right now? The next question you can ask, is there an accommodation we need to revisit or tweak for this unit? This is really helpful during curriculum changes, during testing, or just even to make sure that students are receiving their accommodations or getting access to the general education curriculum. Another question is, have you noticed any changes in behavior, motivation, engagement lately? This is going to help catch signs of regression or signs of growth, to be honest, and it's going to help catch them early. So it's never too late or too early to ask this question. You may also, any of these questions truly, maybe also ask these questions at IEP meetings. So be sure that you have information with data to back up your answers to these questions. You can also ask or be asked, is there a strategy or tool I could try in the classroom that might help with the IEP goal you're targeting? This is fostering a shared responsibility. And I promise you, if you go to your special education teacher and you say, what can I do in my classroom to help you target this specific goal right now? Your special education teacher is going to have to pull their jaw off the ground because they are going to just be so in love with you. It is a shared responsibility, IEPs. IEPs are not, and special education is not, it's a team sport. It's not there's no I in team, right? Like you are not alone on an island in one. It's not all on you. It's not all on the special education teacher. We're all in this together, right? It's a shared responsibility. So asking this question fosters that. How can I help the student meet this goal? You can also ask, how can I support what you're doing in sessions during whole group instruction? This is a great question. Again, jaws on the floor. They're going to be in love with you. Question to ask your related service provider. So your speech pathologist, your occupational therapist, physical therapist, any other interventionists that are working with the student, behavior analysts. How can I support what you're doing in your sessions during whole group instruction? If you ask this question, it is more than likely they're going to provide you with the strategies or interventions that you can be using with that student, and they're going to give you exactly what you need to implement this into the lessons you're already planning. So it's not going to add more to your plate. They're probably going to tell you, oh, here's what we're doing, and here's how you could do it in your classroom. They're going to do it for you because they're so excited that you are willing to work with them and share the responsibility of this goal, of this instruction, of the student's IEP. The last question is, would you be willing to co-lead a small group with me one day next week? Again, jaws on the floor, gonna be in love with you. It's encouraging these co-teaching moments without pressure. This also is a great way for you to receive training as the general education teacher. If you are hung up on, I don't want to ask for training because I don't want to look a certain way or be seen a certain way, or like I don't know what I'm doing, it's a great way for you to inadvertently ask for that training without asking for that training, if you catch my drift. Will you lead a small group, co-led small group with me next week, or a whole group? Or can we co-teach this lesson coming up? I want to make sure that I do X, Y, Z, and that all students were meeting all of the things. And could you show me blah, blah, blah? Oh my goodness. If a gen ed teacher came up to me and asked me some of these questions, I would be like, what day, what time, what do you need me to bring? And can I bring snacks? Like, I would be so excited, elated. Jaws on the floor, again, going to be in love with you. Now, here are some different team check-in ideas that you can do to check in with your special education teachers, your related service providers, other people on the IEP team. These are low-lift, high-impact strategies that you can try. There's a Post-it note strategy. Again, love me a good Post-it note. Leave the Post-it note on the support staff's desk, the teacher's desk, or on a clipboard, and just say, student crushed her morning routine today. That is great data. If you can say what specifically they did and be more specific with it, if you were able to keep the work sample, that if they did a worksheet or something in a book or you recorded it, that is just such great data to have. You could also do a hallway huddle, which is a 1-minute chat between classes. We did these all the time in the high school level and in the middle school. We would just meet while students were changing classes. Hey, heads up, Stephanie was a little off today during math. Did you notice anything similar in your session? Or just a heads up, I know Stephanie's on her way to you. Can we, just so you know, and we would give each other that heads up. Voice memos are also really great. If you're a really fast talker like me, they can be super, super quick, and then you can have them translated so that way you don't have to send the voice message. You can have it in writing and send it in an email, send it in a text, whatever it may be. 30-second voice memo via email or chat app. You could say, I just wanted to share, Stephanie used her graphic organizer independently today, share more about the lesson, what we did. Like, this is such great data. Let's celebrate the wins, but also support our students when they're not winning. A weekly warm-up email every Monday or even every Friday. Here's what I'm planning for next week. Here's what I'm planning for this week. I have Stephanie in my class during this week. Let me know if there's anything additional I need to focus on, or I have these questions for next week. We're targeting these skills. What prerequisite skills do you need assistance with in teaching when you pull students out in the resource room? Again, it can look so many different ways. It's all about that shared responsibility and doing it together and not being on that island of one. A last check-in idea you could do is called a Star and Stretch Friday chat. We did this in a charter school that I worked in, and it was a quick Friday check-in where we talked about students' star moments for the week. We actually had them, they were called roses though. And when we had team meetings or even staff meetings, we would each have to share our rose moments. And then you would say, like, what was a student's rose moment this week or star moment? What way can we stretch this into next week? How can we flourish this into next week? Because we went full on with the rose theme there. But it's just a really great way to check in with your teams, but also elongate that progress or elongate that celebration of students doing a skill or completing a task independently or doing whatever it may be, and moving that into next week as well. Just a reminder that collaboration doesn't have to be formal to be effective. A quick sticky note, a 1-minute chat, a voice message via Voxer or other voice memo app, a shared sentence of insight can really make a huge difference in how you're supporting your students with IEPs. And it's building trust within your IEP team as well. Again, jaw dropping on the floor, going to be in love with you. All right, this section is all about working smarter, not harder, because I want to address one of your biggest concerns. You want to help, you want to do all of the things, but you don't have the time. I want to share these quick, simple systems with you, habits, tools that can help make IEP implementation feel more manageable and even more automatic in things you're already doing. So let's talk about these time saver strategies. I already have them listed out here, but we're going to go through each one. So an IEP at a glance or an IEP snapshot. We talked about this at the beginning of this session. You can ask your special education teacher for a copy of this. There's a free one at Mrs. D's Corner. I'll link it in your notes page as well, but basically it's a one-pager that has all of your pertinent student information on it. So all the essentials, your accommodations, your goals, services, any data that you may need. You can put this in a binder, put it on a clipboard, a password-protected folder. It really just depends on you and how it's going to fit into the systems that you already have in your classroom. Number 2 is cars and desk reminders. These are great for accommodations, to like the sticky note that we did in that teacher's on that teacher's clipboard. Just a great way to remind yourself of students' accommodations, especially during testing or doing new tasks. These could just be really simple, small. You could have them color-coded, use them on sticky notes, even just have it on a 3-ring binder, whatever it may be. It could look a variety of different ways. Then we can move into reusable visuals and anchor charts. So instead of printing off accommodations for each student, you could just use class-wide tools. So if a student has an accommodation for extra time, maybe give everyone extra time and just say, okay, y'all are working really good. I'm going to give everyone an extra 5 minutes. And while that extra 5 minutes might be for Stephanie, now the whole class is going to get those extra 5 minutes, right? You can use timers, sentence stems, graphic organizers. Again, all of these things, these differentiation methods and interventions are going to target multiple needs at once of all the students in your classroom, not just the needs of your students with IEPs. You can use shared digital logs or notes, so collaborate with your different support staff, different IEP team members, special education teachers via Google Docs, Google Forms, spreadsheets, templates, whatever it may be. I like Google Docs because you can write in there at once. Everybody can be in the document at once if needed, and you can add comments, you can link things, and it's super easy to share it with everyone. Just make sure that it's password protected if this is what you're doing. And then you can also do pre-tagged IEP supports in your plans. So when you lesson plan, you more than likely have a template that you really like to follow, or a system that you really like to follow when you're lesson planning. You do this first, then this, and this, and this, right? Everyone has their own strategy for lesson planning. And so what you're going to do now is just add in a next step while you're lesson planning, or another column into your lesson planning template that you already have for IEP supports. So you can either drop in recurring strategies for specific students. This could be where you put in different accommodations that you're going to target, prerequisite skills that students need to learn, maybe differentiation techniques, intervention strategies for some of your students. Again, adding it into something you're already doing is going to make it more likely that you're going to do it. I want to introduce you to a new habit. I want you to give this a shot. So how it works is, I know that as general education teachers, even as special education teachers, time is our biggest concern. We don't have a lot of time to do all of the things. So what I would like for you to do is on Monday, every Monday of the school year, take 5 minutes. That's all that you need. 5 minutes, or even 60 seconds like I wrote here. I say 5 minutes max, 1 minute minimum, somewhere in the 1 to 5 minute range. Pull out one student's IEP. What I want you to do is I want you to skim the present levels and ask yourself, okay, in relation to what I'm teaching this week, what is this specific student's current struggle or strength? And then I want you to, with the goal that struggle or strength is aligned to in that IEP, how can I reinforce this goal in the activities that I'm doing this week? Check for the accommodations that maybe you've been forgetting. It's okay. You can always start now. It's never too late to start. It's just a problem when you don't do it at all. I'll give y'all a pass here, but make sure you're implementing the IEPs and the accommodations. So just ask yourself, is it easy to layer this in this week? And you want to align it with the goal that you're going to try and target. So what accommodations does this goal need to support this student to have access to the general education curriculum and what we're learning this week? You can then, if you want to, set a mini goal for yourself. So maybe check in during math group, or just say, I'm going to track the use of sentence starters while we're working on this specific lesson this week to give me extra data points, or give the IEP team extra data points on this. A pro tip is you can rotate students weekly. So if you have 6 students with IEPs in your classroom, even if you have 18 and you do 2 every Monday and you take 1 minute to pull out a goal and implement that into your lesson plans, you can then cycle through all of your students relatively quickly. And in addition to implementing all of their goals and accommodations into your lesson plans, you're now going to be adding in one more thing. And so start with the implementation we went over and then add in this new weekly habit. I didn't want to go through this without sharing things. Again, a lot of these things you're already doing in the classroom, but I know that you're doing all of these things in your classroom. If you weren't doing any of the things I've mentioned already, I know for a fact that you're doing at least 4 of these 6 things. So I wanted to take time to applaud you because you're already doing great things in your classroom. But I wanted to show you some things that you're doing that are already supporting IEPs because I want you to feel like the advocate and champion that you are as the general education teacher and general education expert. So timers and visuals. These are helping students with executive functioning, you're helping them with transitions, and this is also providing behavior supports for your students that exhibit behaviors. These timers and visual schedules are especially helpful for students with ADHD, autism, and anxiety, which you're going to see a lot of students with these diagnoses. So timers and visual schedules, get them into your classroom. Graphic organizers, break down the tasks visually for students with learning disabilities. So this is just kind of like a task analysis. Maybe don't break it down that much, but when you're giving directions, maybe do one step at a time. Make sure you write each step separately on the board. And this is also a really great strategy because you can use it across different subjects cross-curricularly with no extra prep. It's super, super simple. Flexible seating options. This one I know the majority of teachers are doing. You're supporting sensory needs, attention, self-regulation. You can let students choose between standing desk, wobble seats, floor cushions, using a clipboard, I know some teachers use yoga balls. We have crate seating. It just depends on your classroom and the age of your students, different types of flexible seating options you can provide to them. Checklists and rubrics, you're helping students track multiple step assignments. Again, task analysis, break it down, chunk things out. You're reinforcing independence and goal-aligned behavior, which is task completion, organization, which is great for executive functioning and transitioning. You have sentence starters and word banks. These are great for assisting students with written expression and speech and language goals and communication, to be honest. It's easy to differentiate while also benefiting the entire class. Again, one of those things that you can do for everybody that's really going to help target those students who need it. And then exit tickets. Again, most of you are probably already using exit tickets, especially those of you with older students. These can be really designed to measure progress on IEP goals or just check for understanding. And these are great to keep for data points. Now that we've gone through everything, I want you to remember that when you intentionally build your IEP supports into what you're already doing, you're not just helping your students with IEPs, you're truly creating a better classroom environment and a better classroom experience for everyone. The best part, like I said, you all are doing this already, so it's not going to take more time. It's just going to take a little bit more planning, a little bit more teamwork, and a lot of heart, which I know that you already have. So here's the big takeaway I want to leave you with. You don't need, again, to master every detail of every IEP. You just need to know how to find what matters, use that intentionally, and trust that what you're already doing can go further than you think. Today, we've talked about the 5 parts of an IEP to focus on, simple ways to implement supports before, during, and after your lessons, how to collaborate with your team in ways that don't add more to your plate, and tools to make it all work smarter and not harder. My challenge for you, your homework, is to pick one student. Choose one idea from today and try it the first week of school. Because you don't need perfection, you just need to start. Every IEP that you put into practice in your classroom that you are implementing, this is helping you as the teacher make education more equitable, more accessible, and truly more human for the kids who need it the most.